You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Chicago Bears and Las Vegas Raiders are surprisingly similar in terms of how these two teams match up for their big game on Sunday. We'll hear from our friends from Locked On Raiders helping us preview this matchup on Crossover Thursday. This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm an analyst for Pro Football Focus, and I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for more Bears talk. And make sure that you subscribe to the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen every single day. Today is Crossover Thursday. So we'll be joined by your boy Q from Locked On Raiders. He's a program director for sports radio stations in Vegas, on the ground, covers the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium. I mean, firsthand local expertise. Q is one of my favorite hosts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So glad to have him on the show today to help us learn a little bit more about these Raiders the Bears are facing. A team with some offensive line issues, a very strong pass rush, and some elevated quarterback play. Sound familiar? Yeah, there's a lot of parallels between these two teams. One of them a veteran quarterback, a longtime head coach, one a rookie quarterback. But so there's some differences, but as they match up, you'll start to sense a little bit more and more of how these two teams are on some similar paths. So we'll go through the matchups, we'll go through the big questions, and make sure you are ready to go for Sunday's matchup. Q is great. He's a professional. He's knowledgeable. He knows his team through and through, and he's good at radio. You can just tell. So I'm excited to have him on, and I'm eager to jump right in. All right, welcome into this Crossover Thursday. Lorin Cox from Locked On Bears alongside your boy Q from Locked On Raiders, getting you ready for this Bears-Raiders matchup. It's going to be the first start for Justin Fields in his actually named the long-term starting quarterback for the Bears. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to start with these Las Vegas Raiders in particular. Seems like Derek Carr's been playing really well. It's been a big part of sort of this hot start for the Raiders coming out of the gate. I know a loss last week against the Chargers, but otherwise, how has the faith been for Raiders Nation in terms of the strength behind this start, and specifically their quarterback, where it always seems like there's been this kind of love-hate relationship?
Well, the reason that the Raiders were 3-0 before that Monday night loss to the Chargers was Derek Carr. I mean, he's been doing really well this season. Last year, he did really good as well, but I thought that, I don't know how you can do much better, but he came out of the gate shooting with a very, lackluster running game right now. So he's been able to really put the team on his shoulders and make everything happen. And so, he just kind of took that next step. Now, of course, they took a step backwards in that Monday night loss to the Chargers, but for the most part, man, he's been doing really well. And, finding a way to get the Raiders through a couple of overtime games, that was tough as well, but brought them back from 14 points down both times to win those games, and almost found a way to come back on Monday night, but just came up a little short. So, yeah, Derek Carr's been great. He's not the problem. He's really never been the problem, but he wasn't the problem Monday night. It was just it was a struggle from the gate, slow start, and it was tough to get back into the game. But, yeah, Derek Carr's been playing fantastic ball.
Yeah, given the lack of running game, and I think there's been some offensive line issues that I'd like to get into in a second. What's been the difference for Carr? Is it the likes of Ruggs and Edwards, et cetera, taking that next step with Darren Waller? Is it about the weapons, or is it about things he's doing individually as a quarterback in terms of accuracy and just being more consistent?
I think it's a little bit of both. He's maturing a little bit more. He's in year 8 of his career, the 4th year now with John Gruden, and he just seems to take a step forward every single year. He gets a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. But you mentioned the weapons, and that's really, that's one of the biggest keys. Bryan Edwards is healthy. He was a 3rd-round pick out of South Carolina a year ago. He's healthy. He's a guy that Derek Carr can go to, especially in a pinch. Late in the games, seems like that's when he really shows up, is fourth quarter, overtime, times like that. And then Henry Ruggs, the former 1st-round pick, He put 13 pounds of muscle on. He's running routes better. He just seems a lot more confident. I think having a off season and a real actual training camp and preseason, even though he didn't play in preseason, still helped him a little bit, just kind of getting on the same page with Derek Carr. And Carr's mentioned multiple times to us at the media sessions that he trusts his wide receivers now. He doesn't mind throwing that 50-50 ball. So Monday night, you saw him stretch the field multiple times against the Chargers and connect a couple times with Henry Ruggs. He believes he's going to be there to make that catch now. It's not like he's throwing the ball and blindly hoping that he comes up with the play. He believes every time he throws it, Henry Ruggs is going to come up with it. Matter of fact, he missed Henry Ruggs. He overthrew him, which is hard to do as fast as Henry Ruggs is. He overthrew him one time, would have been a touchdown. He had the step on the DB, but just a miscommunication there on that one. But the trust that he has in his weapons is really what's the big deal. And then Hunter Renfro and Darren Waller, they've been solid. Hunter Renfro's always been solid, but he's only one of 8 wide receivers in the league so far this year that's had 5 catches in every game so far, which, wow. You don't think that, Hunter Renfro is going to do that. You think he'll just be there on third and Renfro, like they call him, third down, he'll come through. But he's been playing some good ball, man. So all those weapons have turned out to be really good for Derek Carr so far this season.
So why hasn't the running game been able to follow suit? You think if they're throwing the ball so well, teams might take guys out of the box a little bit and make things easier on Josh Jacobs and company? Does it all fall on the offensive line, or what's the problem there?
I think that a lot of it falls on the offensive line. I don't think they're getting the push. There's obviously a lot of reconstruction of the offensive line this offseason, but Josh Jacobs missed a couple games. He was out with a toe and an ankle injury. He came back on Monday, and it was just didn't really look like he had the burst in him. Looked like he was, missed a couple games. Peyton Barber, he was a guy that's only really been with the team about a month, and he had over 100 yards against the Dolphins, but he hurt himself on Monday. Kenyon Drake, he was signed in the offseason to be a 1-2 punch with Josh Jacobs. He's been very lackluster as far as running the ball between the tackles. He's caught the ball in the backfield well, but he hasn't been running the rock really well. He's not seeing the holes. He's not blocking very well. Jalen Richard, he's been out all season. He's been on the IR. It looks like he might get back this week, but that's a great question, man. I mean, one of my biggest keys to the game against the Chargers was you got to establish the run. They're giving up 170 a game, and they got like 50, and so they weren't able to get that thing going, and that's been a big problem. And I think part of the reason for the slow start is that they can't get that run game established.
When it comes to that offensive line, they've invested with first-round picks at both tackle spots. Does that leave the interior as the clear weakness there, or have those young guys, Colton Miller and Alex Leatherwood, I think was their first-round pick this year, have they not lived up to the hype? Where has the main issue been there?
Well, from the center position all the way right, it's been, and really, to be honest, starting at the left guard position, Colton Miller's been solid, but at the left guard position, Richie Incognito is supposed to be there. He's 38 years old, coming off an Achilles injury. He hasn't played at all this season. Now he's got a calf injury. I'd be shocked if he plays at all this season. That's just something I've been saying. But that's what happens when you kind of depend on a 38-year-old coming off an Achilles, that he's going to be there and give you 5, 6, 7 games. You don't get anything. Well, at least you haven't got anything yet. So that's a problem. Then Rodney Hudson, he's in Arizona now playing with the Cardinals. They traded him in the offseason. Andre James, they expected him to fill that void. He was an undrafted free agent out of UCLA. And, well, he's been pretty bad. He hasn't filled the void. He's not very good at that center position. And I get it. It's only been a small sample size, 4 games. But at some point, you want to see the team start to gel at that position where you have to be on the same page. He hasn't been there. Then their right guard position, Denzel Good, who did a great job last season filling in multiple positions, he tore his ACL in the very first game. He tore his ACL after like 6 plays. So he is out. And then Alex Leatherwood, their first-round pick that you mentioned, hasn't been very good. I mean, he's had moments where he's been good, but not consistent. You know what I mean? So that's been a problem as well. There's conversation that he might even be kicking in the guard sooner rather than later. And then that opens up another hole at the tackle position. What do you do there? So it's not a cohesive unit. And covering football and covering the Bears and just watching football, if the offensive line is not a cohesive unit, it's not going to be very good.
Today's episode of Locked On Bears brought to you by rockauto.com. They're a family business that have been serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. They got everything you could possibly need for your vehicle: engine control modules, fuel pump assemblies, brake parts, tail lamp, motor oil, even new carpet. Whatever you need, they've got it. Their catalog is so deep. It's honestly remarkable how many parts they have available, but it's really easy to navigate. You just enter in your car's make and model, And then it pulls up all the different parts for your vehicle, and you can sort between the brands, specifications, and prices you prefer. Those prices are particularly important because some of the chain part stores, they'll have different price tiers if you're a professional mechanic or a do-it-yourselfer like us. But rockauto.com's prices are the same for everybody. So don't spend up to twice as much for the same parts somewhere else. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. When you check out, fill in their box. It says, how did you hear about us? And write in the words locked on. That way they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Yeah, both of these teams are not coming in with super consistent offensive lines, and that's going to make for maybe some potentially ugly football there, especially these Bears offensive tackles against these Raiders defensive edge rushers, I should say, are really where I'm circling in this game. When you got Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue and Carl Nassib even, I mean,
Yeah.
has that been the strength of this Raiders defense, and what has made them so good?
Well, I got to give Gus Bradley a lot of credit, the new defensive coordinator. I got to give Ron Miles, the secondary coach, a lot of credit. I got to give Richard Smith, the linebacker coach, a lot of credit. Those three guys have come in and found a way to turn around a defense that's been the Achilles heel of the team and has made it a strength of the team. That has allowed them. I mentioned early in the show that Derek Carr has brought the team back from down 14 twice. The only reason he's able to do that is because the defense has been solid. The defense has gotten the ball back and come up with some big plays when they needed to help him get the ball back in a nice, favorable position. He's able to march down the field and get scores. But the defense has been playing some good ball, and they have just enough veterans that have played in the Gus Bradley scheme. You mentioned Unique Ngakoue. They got Casey Hayward on the outside, got KJ Wright. They got Denzel Perriman. They got Darius Philon in the middle of the defensive line. I mean, there's multiple guys that have played for Gus Bradley. So they already came in knowing his scheme, and it helps teach the young guys the scheme. So that's been a real pleasant surprise that they've been able to gel as quickly as possible and as quickly as they have. And so they've really been keeping the Raiders in a lot of games when they start off slow. So the defensive line has done a good job. Max Crosby is a problem, and I don't mean a problem for the Raiders. I mean a problem for opposing teams. He's been really good. Ngakoue, he's been really good. And even though the numbers aren't necessarily there as far as actual sacks, the pressures are incredible. And pressures on a quarterback is trouble, especially if it's a rookie.
Yeah, we're going to be keeping our eye on that. Absolutely. Last thing before we switch gears here, former Chicago Bear Nick Kwiatkowski at linebacker, a homegrown talent, a fourth-round pick in Chicago, somebody that Bears fans liked, but there was always Roquan Smith and Danny Trevathan. He never really had a long-term future in Chicago. How has he been in Las Vegas? Has there been in Chicago? It's always like, well, he's great against the run, but maybe just a step slow and maybe not perfect and not great in coverage. A little bit more of that old school kind of run-stopping linebacker. But how has the Raiders' experience been with him, and especially this season so far?
He's been okay. I thought he did well last year, and I thought he's been decent this year. In training camp, there was questions if he was going to start, if he was going to be out there. He's not the actual strength of the linebacking core right now. I mean, the Raiders have, like I mentioned, Denzel Perriman, KJ Wright, Corey Littleton. They brought him in as a free agent at the same time they brought in Kwiatkowski. And so he plays a role. I actually think that he's been doing it okay against the pass, probably a little bit better than he has the run, which is kind of backwards, but he's been doing pretty well. He's needed, he's got some good depth. So, I mean, he's not, the linebacker of the year, but he's also not a major liability. So he's been a good player for the Raiders.
Sounds like kind of that same range that he was in Chicago. Some things
Right.
never change. Well, yeah, some things never change, but a lot has changed with the Bears. And when we come back, we'll turn around and give Q the opportunity here to ask us about Justin Fields and everything else we've seen in a kind of a wild start to the Bears season. Up next on this Locked On Bears, Locked On Raiders crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
And we're back. The Locked On Podcast Network, Chicago Bears, Las Vegas Raiders. They square up this Sunday, Allegiant Stadium, to help us talk about the Bears. We got my man Lorin Cox. You can find him on Twitter at CoxSports1, host of Locked On Bears. And Lorin, thank you for the time. I always appreciate talking to you. It's always fun talking back to you. And we have history, man. We go all the way back to 2017, 2018? What year did Khalil Mack? 2018 officially got traded in the offseason right before the season started in 2018. So me and you have been talking back and forth for quite a while.
Yeah, we've and especially now with the rumors again this offseason that maybe the Raiders were looking to bring Khalil Mack back. I wonder if we're going to do the same podcast again 3 years later.
Right, exactly. So at least this time we're talking about a game. Obviously, we talked about the Bears and the Raiders when they went to London. Now we're a couple years removed from that, and we're talking about Allegiant Stadium, Las Vegas. Fun matchup this Sunday. Two teams that really probably need victories in a major way to start feeling good about themselves. On Wednesday, we found out that Justin Fields will indeed be the quarterback moving forward. Matt Nagy decided to change his Matt Nagy conversation and say that Andy Dalton was the guy as long as he's healthy, and he went with the more sensible idea, Justin Fields. Why in week 5 did it make sense for Nagy to make that call?
The problem is it's sort of felt like it's made sense since almost week 1. So
Right.
it's been a long time coming for the Bears fan. But the thing is that Nagy's decisions haven't always made complete sense, right? That was the challenge here. A lot of Bears fans have been ready to fire their head coach midway through this season. Still, maybe think potentially there could be a change at some point if things hit south and the Bears have a tough part of their schedule. But long story short, Andy Dalton got hurt week 2 against Cincinnati Bengals. Justin Fields came in, he was all right. Struggled in his first actual start against the Cleveland Browns, one of the contenders in the AFC. It was
Right.
high quality of opponent for a rookie to come in there against Myles Garrett. It was a very, very difficult spot to be in. But then last week against the Detroit Lions, they changed play callers from Nagy, gave up the role and said, you know what, I'm not getting the job done very well, apparently, for our team. So offensive coordinator Bill Lazor started calling the plays against the Lions, and you go against an 0-4 team instead of the Browns. That'll help your fortunes quite a bit too. But Fields really looked the part in that game. It felt like the scheme was a little bit more tailored to what his skill set brings, and he was delivering some really impressive throws downfield. Still some rookie mistakes, but it looked like the guy that the Bears thought they were getting when they traded up to number 11. And so it became a little bit too clear and obvious that Fields gives them something more. We always knew Fields would be better than Andy Dalton. It was a matter of, is he ready? Is he better week 1, or how many weeks will it take before he's really up to speed to be able to be clearly the better quarterback option? And it kind of looked that way in week 2, but they wanted a couple weeks with Dalton still injured to really see what Fields could do. And then I think he would have faced some kind of locker room revolt if he had gone back to Dalton, given how much Fields had played and how well he had played compared to, we kind of know what Andy Dalton is. And there's
Right.
something there. There's a floor of like a solid-ish starting caliber quarterback, but you got to go for the young guy and go for the ceiling there, especially if you're a head coach trying to save your job.
Right, no doubt about it. And you mentioned the play calling. Bill Lazor, the offensive coordinator, he's calling the shots. Matt Nagy's not calling them. So when you're watching the game, when you're covering this game, how much difference do you see as far as the play calling? How does Bill Lazor set up Justin Fields in a better situation and a better chance to be successful than Matt Nagy did?
Yeah, it's interesting because like it's still the same system, right? I mean, they're still running a lot of the same plays, but it's kind of the little thing. So it's the flow and the order. I mean, they certainly stuck to the running game and established much more of a rushing identity. Again, against the Lions, they went with a lot more like 2 and 3 tight end sets, and they're still putting Justin Fields in some shotgun looks and some some under center looks with those heavier personnel that they can still throw out of. But it was much more of an identity to say we are going to hand the ball off to David Montgomery 20 times. Now Montgomery sprains his knee and is out the next 4 to 5 weeks, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, well, wait a minute, can they still have that identity with Damian Williams? That's a whole other conversation. But so you combine that with they kept running backs and tight ends in to pass protect a little bit more, some more 6 and 7 man protections, because Fields is not the precision quick strike quarterback that Nagy wanted his scheme to have. The first game it was like 3-step drop curl, 3-step drop slant, where you have to be perfect in your footwork and perfect on your timing to get the ball off quickly and perfectly on target. And not that Field is inaccurate, but to expect a rookie to come in and be spot on with new teammates and learning the NFL game and all that was not his skill set. So we saw more play action, more moving pockets, longer drawn out plays where he has a little bit more time to let the play develop. And then he can fire the ball 20 to 25 yards downfield and hit a really tight window on the sideline to Allen Robinson, or drop it over the top to Darnell Mooney right into the breadbasket. Like really impressive NFL caliber throws. The kid just needs a little bit more time to see it and to really let the whole play develop. And that's why I'm a little concerned about this Bears offensive line against those Raiders pass rushers.
Yeah, the pass rushers are playing some really good ball right now. Like I said before, they're getting after the quarterback. Not necessarily sacks all the time, but the pressures are there in a major way. Now, I want to get to the running game in a few seconds, but I do want to ask another question about the quarterback position. Andy Dalton, you mentioned, you know who he is, and we all do. He's a veteran, been around the league for a long time, and I think that's probably why Nagy started with him, just because he was the veteran, and you kind of know what you're going to get from him. How much has he helped Justin Fields kind of grow into being a professional. I mean, again, obviously all these guys want to play. They don't want to be the mentor role, but that's what he is right now. He's a mentor. He's a teacher. He's an extra set of ears and eyes that, can help Justin Fields. How much have you seen him kind of help Justin Fields? And even though he's on the sideline now, how much do you think he'll help him moving forward?
It's really been a lot. And the thing that's hard to differentiate a little bit is they also have Nick Foles, who's their third string quarterback, who they're still paying. He's the highest paid third string quarterback in the NFL. So they're still paying him a lot of money to be that mentor as well. So how much is Andy versus how much is Nick, to be determined. But the veteran quarterbacks have been such a calming presence for him to have an extra quarterback coach when things went really bad against the Browns, to be able to have a guy come over and say, hey, you know what? You've been sacked 9 times, but it gets easier from here. And to help him, here's what I was seeing on the sideline. Here's what you should have seen here, and working with him in that regard. And even after Justin Fields was named the starter, they had a phone conversation where Andy says, hey, like, I don't want this to ruin our relationship. Let's still be friends. We'll still be, it almost sounds like a boyfriend girlfriend thing where like you just broke up and like we can still be friends, right? We're still not ruin our relationship, but like you're on your own now and you're doing bigger and better things without me, and that's okay. But I think both of those quarterbacks have been really strong and supportive throughout. Neither one, Dalton or Foles, wants to be in the role that they're in now, but they're the type of professionals that take their job seriously and are not just going to pout and demand a trade right away necessarily. And they're going to help Fields, and they have helped Fields in terms of getting ready for games. Fields himself said he's kind of changed his preparation each week. Like the first couple of weeks, he kind of did it one way. He didn't get a lot of specifics, but said he's changed a couple of times of like, oh, okay, I need to pay more attention here, spend more time on this as opposed to that. And he said even when he was named starting quarterback, it was technically Tuesday night, the team announced it on Wednesday. He said his parents were over and they wanted to go out and celebrate. And he said, I'm going to stay home and watch film with my dog. So his parents went out and celebrated Fields being named the starter. Fields stayed home and watched tape. So he's definitely dialed in as the starter.
Nice. All you had to do really is just have a camera on Justin Fields' family, and they would have told you ahead of time that he was a starting quarterback. That's pretty cool. I like that.
The Chicago Bears are currently 5.5-point underdogs on the spread for this game at BetOnline.ag. The number one place we trust and the number one place we recommend for all of your sports betting needs. Not only pro football, but college football, baseball in the playoffs now, soccer, tennis, golf, and plus when basketball season right around the corner, hockey season right around the corner, anything you name, they've got it for sports at betonline.ag. The money line for Bears Raiders is Bears plus 200. That line's been shifting a little bit as Justin Fields now officially named the starter. Over under at 44 points, expecting maybe a little bit of a lower scoring matchup. And now's the time to get those bets in. Sign up today for a free account and enter our promo code Locked On to receive your free 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts.
Now, going to the running back position real quick, David Montgomery, I like him a lot, man. I liked him at Iowa State. He's a hell of a running back. He to me, he seems like he's a Chicago Bear through and through. Like he's what a Chicago Bear should be. So he's out. Damian Williams, I know he's a little bit banged up as well. Maybe he's not. I saw the injury report. Maybe he plays. Maybe he doesn't. If, in fact, he doesn't play, what's the running plan after him?
Yeah, that's where it gets a little messy. So Williams had a thigh bruise against the Lions. So I would I'm not a doctor, but bruise seems a little bit hopefully easier to play through. Right. So he should be the guy. But if he's not, they've got a rookie 6th-round pick, Khalil Herbert from actually I'm blanking on the school that he played for as I bring it up in front of me. Virginia Tech, of course. Virginia Tech running back. He's their primary kickoff returner, but they traded for Jakeem Grant from the Dolphins. Right. So presumably they're going to promote a couple of guys from their practice squad, depending on if Williams is healthy or not. The first one is Ryan Nall from Oregon State. He's kind of a big physical running back. He plays some fullback for them, but he'll play running back, a little bit better blocker and just runs hard to the middle, but not fast. Herbert's much more of a kind of he's not a scat back, but a little bit more of that speed, smaller, slight, slender kind of runner there. Nall's kind of the big fullback hybrid type guy. And they also have Artavis Pierce, also from Oregon State, also a college teammate of Ryan Nall, 2 running backs from the same backfield, both undrafted free agents from separate years. They're going to presumably promote one or both of them from the practice squad, depending on Damian Williams' health. And that would be the option. A rookie and 2 former undrafted free agents is not necessarily a NFL caliber backfield, but we're still expecting them to want to try and run the ball hard. And maybe you rely on the 6th-round pick being kind of an unknown on tape for opposing defenses, excuse me. But it's not the spot you necessarily want to put your rookie quarterback in. So maybe we'd see more option plays to maybe
Right.
have Fields be more involved in the running game. But very real concern. Fingers crossed for Damian Williams for sure.
Right, no doubt about it. And before I flip over to the defensive side of things, to make everything go, I talked about the Raiders' struggle on the offensive line, and you mentioned the Bears' struggle on the offensive line. What's it looking like? How's it shaping up? And where's your biggest concern as far as the O-line goes?
Definitely the offensive tackle positions, although center has not been phenomenal. So the strength is clearly the two guards. Cody Whitehair, the left guard, James Daniels, the right guard, both second-round picks. Both have kind of come up in the system. They're not perfect. They're not Pro Bowlers, but they get the job done. Left tackle Jason Peters is almost 40 years old.
Right.
He's a potential future Hall of Famer, but so far on the back end of his career that speed especially has been a challenge for him. And Myles Garrett, and even last week, Romeo Okwara and then from the Lions was giving him some trouble too. So that's a little bit shaky. Jermaine Ifedi on the right tackle spot was a former first-round pick by the Seahawks. They moved him inside the guard, moved him back to tackle. He very inconsistent, but average at best right tackle. The center is former undrafted free agent. So the protection calls.
What is this, the Raiders' offensive line?
It sounds pretty similar, right? And it's
Yeah,
not a great spot to put a rookie quarterback in against a really good
right.
defense. It worked against the Lions because it's the Detroit Lions, but there's
Yeah.
that like if the Browns got 9 sacks on Justin Fields. It wouldn't surprise me if the Crosby and Nassib and Ngakoue, they should be feasted. They should be definitely drooling at the potential of feasting in this game. But I would really expect you see a lot of Cole Kmet pass blocking, a lot of running backs pass blocking, specifically to chip on those tight ends to give Justin Fields some time. Because give him some time, and he's got the talent to dice you up in the passing game. It just doesn't always have that time.
I feel like we're going to be looking at a couple offensive lines that look very similar. I mean, really, they're like mirrors of each other. So, yeah, that should be an interesting chess match down there in the trenches. We're talking right now with Lorin Cox, host of Locked On Bears, on Twitter at Cox Sports One. And let's talk about the defensive side of things. When you think of the Bears defense, of course, Khalil Mack is the guy. We don't have to revisit that conversation. We know how it goes. Obviously, the Raiders, it's been reported by Vic Tafur of The Athletic that they reached out to the Bears in the offseason to gauge their interest in maybe trading them back. It didn't happen. So here we are. Fine. It's week 5. It's all good. I know Khalil Mack and what he could do. I know he's also a little banged up, but I don't think there's anything that's going to stop him from playing on Sunday against his former team. How big has Robert Quinn been to the success of Khalil Mack this year as opposed to what Robert Quinn was last year when they signed him to a big deal as a free agent?
And that's been really pretty much the story of this Bears defense. I mean, there's some subplots there, but he has turned some kind of corner, and he gave some kind of mysterious personal something personal happened in his life that he hasn't really gotten into a lot of details about. That last year, I don't remember exact wording, but I get the impression he was in some sort of bad place
Yeah.
last season, whether that's physically, whether that's mentally, whether that's something in his family or off the field. I mean, he's like, I'm not going to get into it, but he said he figured some things out this offseason and has sort of turned a corner in some way, shape, or form. And I'm really happy for him, and I hope his life is happier and whatever has happened has passed at this point. But he has been more explosive, more electric. Just there's an energy there, and he's really gotten back to some of those big Robert Quinn seasons that we saw earlier in his career. Because 12 months ago, or I guess this offseason, Bears fans were ready to cut Robert Quinn. It was a matter of, okay, we have to get through 2021 because his salary is guaranteed, and then this guy is out of here because he's getting paid way too much and he's not producing. And all of a sudden, it's a new man. He has been so explosive off the edge. He's so bendy too. He's one of those guys that can contort his body to turn the corner in a way that is just, you can't teach that. You're just physically can or can't do that. And so he's taken so much of that pressure off of Khalil Mack, where teams are still putting 2-3 blockers on Mack fairly consistently. The tight ends are always chipping on that side, but now Quinn's got 4.5 sacks of his own, and all of a sudden you can't pay as much attention to Khalil Mack. So it has been such a bonus to this Bears defense, especially when they have some major, very real concerns on the back end in that secondary. But if the pass rush plays as well as it has been, you're able to mitigate some of that and keep this team in some games because of such a ferocious pass rush.
I'm telling you, man, this game is so eerily similar. I mean, you're talking about concerns with Crosby and Ngakoue. I'm talking about concerns with Mack and Quinn. I mean, it's like I said, it feels the same. Now, you mentioned the secondary and the back end in particular. I'm a big Eddie Jackson guy. Loved him coming out of Alabama, even though he broke his leg, but I thought that he's a turnover machine. He creates a bunch of turnovers. Jalen Johnson, I like him, a central California guy. I like him a lot. But what's going on with the secondary? Where's the big holes and the issues going on?
So Eddie Jackson has been a problem. He's not been the big issue, but he has not been the same Eddie Jackson that he once was, and we still
Wow.
don't have a good answer for that. But he has been out of position in some busted coverage plays. He takes
Wow.
taking weird angles to receive. Like, there's a post route, and like he's a single deep safety. You just have to come over and make the tackle, and he overruns the receiver and runs into his cornerback, and you get a easy 30-yard touchdown. And it's just like, wait, what happened to the Pro Bowler in 2018 that had 4 interceptions and pick sixes, and it was a huge playmaker? Like,
Yeah.
there's this mystery of like what has happened to Eddie Jackson. He's not been terrible by any means, but he has not been the Eddie Jackson that we've come to know. The
Right.
real concern is slot cornerback Duke Shelley, former 6th-round pick. You get what you get when you put a 6th-round pick in that spot. I mean,
Yeah.
he has been very inconsistent. Opposing quarterbacks have been targeting him, and then their other safety, Tashawn Gibson, has been hurt the last 2 weeks. We'll see what his status is this week, but his backup, Deion Bush, much more of a traditional strong safety. He's fine underneath, covering underneath. The running backs out of the backfield, the little things in zone, but if he's a back end safety, there's been some vulnerability there. So those two spots have been a real struggle. Jalen Johnson has been great, and the other outside cornerback is Kendall Vildor, a 5th-round pick.
Yeah.
Great name, average cornerback, still very young, still kind of he's a potential weakness there, but it's definitely been slot and the other safety, and then just like you mixed bag for Eddie Jackson. Sometimes he's still great, and sometimes you get something totally unexpected. It's like what happened to that guy that we thought was the future of the safety position in Chicago?
Yeah. No, he got a contract extension not too long ago.
Yeah, in big bucks, and it
Yeah.
has like the last year and 4 games.
Wow, that's interesting. That really is. Again, like I said, I was a big fan of his coming out of Alabama, and he dropped in the draft because of that broken leg. And so that's, in my opinion, how the Bears were able to swoop him up. And I thought, man, what a steal. So that's pretty strange to hear that he's playing like that. Maybe the Monstars got him, man. They got some of his talent or something. But when you look at the run game, we talked about the Raiders and their struggles running running the ball. How have the Bears been as far as stopping the run? Are they struggling? Is that still an area of strength? What's going on with the Bears run defense?
Yeah, for the most part, it's been okay. They've been
Okay.
good enough, right? I mean, the Browns were able to run on them pretty well because they've got one of the best running games in the NFL. But for the most part, they they'll stop the run, right? They're not gonna give up the 25, 30-yard breakaway runs, but they're not shutting you down entirely in the running game either. I mean, they're back to that Vic Fangio, Brandon Staley style of defense where they want to pre-snap show you a lot of two deep coverages, and they'll go a little lighter in the box, and they'll say, you know what, if you want to run the ball on us and get your 3 to 4 yards, we'll be okay with that because we don't think you can consistently work your way down the field for a whole drive throughout the course of a game actually doing that. So they'll bend, and they're the bend don't break kind of style. So they're
Sure.
they're willing to give you a little bit in the running game, but they certainly haven't been vulnerable in there, but they're not completely shutting you down either.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's some good intel right there, man. And like I said, the Raiders have been struggling to run the ball anyway. So I'm interested to see how long they try to stick with it before they just say, hey, it's Derek Carr or bust. So should be interesting. And final question for you, man. I do appreciate it. It's been great.
Sure.
Always love catching up with you. If there's an area of weakness, if there's one area of the Bears team that you think is vulnerable where the Raiders could exploit it come Sunday at Allegiant Stadium, where would you say that it is?
A couple of things we've touched on. Definitely the slot and it's vertical up the seams. If you can go slot with the slot cornerback and the safety, the backup Deion Bush, if he's in for Tashawn Gibson behind them, you're going to find some room to run absolutely on that end. And offensively, the offensive tackles is where that pass rush is going to be, which is why I'm like it's so concerned about where these matchups are going to be. But I think Derek Carr, if you can give him a little bit of time to throw,
Yeah.
he should be able to move the ball well through the air. Even the Lions last week against the Bears, they got in the red zone 3 times in their first 3 drives and came away with 0 points because of 2 turnovers and a turnover on downs on 4th and 5. But Jared Goff and a bad Lions offense got in the red zone 3 times in a row to start that game. And just so I think the Raiders shouldn't have too much trouble at least getting the ball down there. It's just a matter of finishing those drives and making sure they don't shoot themselves in the foot, that there should be some opportunities there. And then, if they get pass rush with those offensive tackles for Chicago, there's a clear formula here for how this game should go for the Raiders. It's just, you wonder about that Justin Fields magic and maybe something else for him dialing up. It's going to be a fun quarterback duel for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like really this game is going to be determined by what goes on in the trenches on both sides of the ball for both teams. you
Yeah.
know, I mean,
whose offensive line can suck less? Like,
Right, exactly. Whose offensive line can suck less and whose defensive line can shine a little bit more, right? I mean, it seems pretty simple. So now that we've figured it all out, now they just got to go out there and do it. We figured out we did the hard problem. We put it all together. Now they just got to go execute.
Oh man, it's gonna be fun to see, especially with both these teams getting their tight ends involved quite a bit, and
Yeah.
how the pass rushers are going to respond to that, and which defensive coordinator that will dial up some different ways to get their pass rushers home. It's gonna be a fun matchup in that way, but we'll see if that ends up looking ugly in terms of the quarterbacks and the scoreboard. We'll see.
Right, no doubt about it. Well, Lorin, like I said, man, this is great stuff. It's always good to catch up with you, man. Good luck to the Bears on Sunday game. I know they need and want really badly, and the Raiders they need and want one really badly too. So should be fun. Should be a good homecoming for Khalil Mack, kind of sorta. Going up against his former team. I know there's going to be a lot of love shown after the game, and let's leave the love there. Don't worry about the love during the game. Show that love after the game. But thank you so much, man, for your time. I really do appreciate you.
Hey, anytime, man. Glad to have you on as well, and keep up the great work. Thanks again to your boy Q from Locked On Raiders for joining us on the podcast today. If you enjoyed our conversation, make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Whether you're listening on a podcasting platform or you're watching along on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, that follow or subscribe button is always the best way to keep up with all of our podcasts. They're free or available on all platforms, coming to you 5 days a week. So I appreciate everyone who tunes in, not just once a week or once a month, but every single day, keeping up with all of our Bears talk. It's fun to help work our way through this season, get to know our opponents, break down all the games, and so much more. It's my pleasure to bring it to you. I thank you for listening and following along with us. And I hope in exchange, the Locked On Bears podcast makes it just a little bit easier for you to bear down.